Morning everyone, and welcome to a lovely morning in Berkshire. We're at the former site of the Woodley Aerodrome today, where Mark's going to tell us a little bit about an old flame of his, the Herald. Join us on our layover.
One life for the revolution. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up. Rise up and
So Mark, here we are, the flight deck of the Herald.
Yeah.
This takes me back to 1920s. I'm being honest, it's not what I imagined would be a modern flight deck. But you've flown this, so this is not that old an aircraft. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I did. I guess it was pretty elderly when I flew it in the mid-90s, and it was struggling a little bit to sort of keep up with the environment. It wasn't stage 3 noise. We couldn't really sort of go anywhere in Europe in particular, so we were more restricted to the UK.
So tell me, well, what do you mean by stage 3 noise?
Stage 3 noise. So anyone who's listening, stage 3 was a noise standard that jets had to, and all aeroplanes had to adhere to, which basically kept the environmental noise below a certain level, so they could operate at night time at airports in and out of Europe without bothering people too much.
Okay, well, take us around the flight deck a bit. I mean, let's start with the radar, if you don't mind, because the modern radars now on my A350, and we will put a comparison of that up to show people it's not really this. This is run by valves. Take me through it. How would you work it?
Well, it's interesting you say about the radar, because actually, sort of modern avionics, almost everything about a modern aeroplane is, well, in fact, absolutely everything about a modern aeroplane is way better than flying an aeroplane like this. Situational awareness, so we'll come on to the radar in that respect in a second. But you can see from this cockpit that there's nothing really that's giving me a picture of what's around me. And so this radar, I don't know how good, have we got a decent shot of it?
Yeah.
So this radar, this is a single colour radar. All it's doing is looking out the front of the aeroplane and giving you a range and so on. We had a very slightly better radar than this, I have to say. But there's nothing that's overlaying that weather picture on a map or a navigation display. So really picking your way around weather, you were looking out the window and using this to sort of pick your way around the worst bits. The thing that we used it for most was doing visual approaches in the Channel Islands.
How to pick out the islands?
We put it on ground mapping.
And it would be big enough to
be able to see the island. And that was the thing that it was most useful for.
So, talk us through the levers. I mean, I've flown turboprops, propeller aeroplanes before, but there is a whole host of levers here, Mark, that I've got no idea what they do. Just talk us through these.
So actually, these are Dart engines, and actually the operation of the Dart was pretty straightforward. It had some crazy numbers. 14,700 RPM was a number that we set quite a lot, and you've got these double needle counters, which were hard work. You set torque in PSI, Lord knows why, and these are TGT gauges. So that's the temperature of the core, basically, the engine. This one lever in the middle here, I don't know how, I'm sure we'll be able to cut some pictures in, but this one lever it's got a big P on it. It was known as the P45 lever for the non-UK
that means you
people.
That means you get the sack.
You get fired.
Yeah.
And what happened? This controls the pitch of both propellers.
Okay.
And you unlock the controls, and then as you went through 12,500 RPM on the throttles, which was not very far above idle, this lever would fling forwards, the propellers would start to coarsen up, and then you'd put power on the engine. Where you go. Brilliant. If you made a slight error or you had to close the throttles, this thing popped forward and you didn't remember to then bring it back, the next time you touch the throttles, the TGTs would go through the roof and you'd have molten engine dripping out the exhaust pipes.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
it was pretty touchy. But okay, I'll talk you through the levers. So these are the throttles.
Yeah.
1 and 2. These are the which we call crinkly chips, the HP cocks, and you would feather the engine if you needed to shut the engine down.
Effectively, that's the starter switch, isn't it? Fuel on, fuel off.
Fuel on and fuel off.
That's it. Okay, yeah.
They took a little bit of starting, and careful captains would do what's called milking the HP cocks.
Wow.
So they just to feed a little bit of fuel in, and the temperature would go up and so on. That's the ground fine pitch lever. The rest of them are nothing to do with the engines. However, these here, these are pretty strange switches, fuel trim switches, and the only thing I can liken that to is a mixture control on a piston engine.
Okay.
And down here you've got some fuel datum indications, and up here is a thing called the Rolls-Royce fuel computer, and what you did was you set your temperature, so and altitude, so let's say we're about 15 and about sea level-ish today, and it would give you a fuel datum to set. And so if we were let's have a look, if we're at 500 feet and it's 15 degrees, we'd be setting 96% on those.
Wow.
In order to get full power, because
So this isn't actually connected to anything. It's just a whiz wheel.
just a whiz wheel, yeah, just a slide rule basically.
Oh right. Wow.
Because this was an engine that you just open the throttle all the way to the firewall on. You just open the throttle, unlike a lot of turboprops where you would open the throttle to a temperature or another limit.
This looks amazing, Mark. It does look reminiscent of something from the 40s, and I presume it was designed not long after that.
55, yeah, 1955.
This one's a little bit special, as we talked about, because it's been flown by His Royal Highness,
His Royal Highness
Prince Philip, which we talked about outside. But where did he go in this? What was his?
South America. So, very sadly, the Herald was kind of on the back foot from the get-go, and they were busy trying to sell aeroplanes pretty much anywhere they could. It's a rugged aeroplane. It's a real great freighter, and they could do lots of quick change. And South America was a good market for anything that required mixed passenger and cargo. So they did sell a few aeroplanes down in South America. There's some great pictures actually in the back here. If you come along to the museum, there's some good pictures of the tour.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I don't know about this aircraft at all, Mark, other than it's really old and you flew it. But I mean, is it pressurized? I mean, was this airplane pressurized?
It was pressurized, and it in its heyday it was a reasonably high flying airplane, mid-teens to the early 20,000s, that kind of those kind of numbers. When I flew it, the cabin pressurization limit was 1.8 psi.
Wow, so nothing really.
Which, so for the uninitiated, 1.8 psi, I reckon I could probably breathe out really heavily and pressurize the aeroplane slightly more than that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, a modern airliner like the 350 is at about 9 psi.
8.6,
Yeah.
9 psi. The pressurization itself was not from bleed air, it was from what are called roots blowers.
Okay.
So geared powered compressors, and every time that when you shut down, the aeroplane didn't properly fully pressurize, so you had to crack the window open just to let the aeroplane fully depressurize. Did all
Oh my
sorts of
goodness.
crazy stuff like that. It was a very unusual aeroplane to fly.
I love the flight deck, but
Do you?
No, I do actually. I find it really retro. I really enjoy this sort of big controls and it being quite
Yeah.
almost mechanical. You almost feel, in the modern airliner, you don't really feel attached to the aeroplane as such.
This was
Whereas this is far
yeah.
more. You feel attached to the aeroplane sitting here.
Now, and I can't say that's a good thing if I'm really honest, because it was a hard work aeroplane to fly. There was no doubt about it. So, okay, right, here you go. Here's some bits. This is a thing called the Sperry Zero Reader. So, down here is your flight director. It's not on the main instrument. So again, a bit like the radar, no integration of instrumentation. Sperry Zero. It was very limited, and some of them were coupled to an autopilot when I flew them. We're one or two aeroplanes.
So you had to hand fly all your approaches?
Everything was hand flown. No horizontal situation indicator, so just a cross pointer. This really didn't reduce your workload. When you put the autopilot in, and the airplanes that had autopilots, usually what you were waiting for was the autopilot to fail. And so we would sit with our hands on the controls, just waiting for it to do something kind of crazy. But here you go. What do you reckon the autopilot was powered by?
Well, electricity would be a guess.
Sadly, not air. It was a. It was a pneumatic autopilot.
How does it get powered by air? Explain to me how that works.
Well, it was the only bleed source on the airplane. Apparently, it used air from the compressor section of the left engine.
Wow, amazing. Well, Mark, we've seen the inside a little bit.
Yeah.
Take me round the outside.
I'll take you on the outside.
Or, in fact, no. I tell you, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Before we go outside, let's go and look at this cabin. And I mean, this was the first aeroplane really designed as a QC, as we call it, or a quick change that would go from passenger to freight. Simply, is that a word to describe it?
Yeah, it was in freight at night, passengers in the day was its original design, and it did that for its the 50 aeroplanes that were around. They did that for their service life.
Let's go and have a look at. So Mark, here we are in the cabin of this aircraft that took Prince Philip around South America.
Yeah.
Tell us about the cabin. What was different about this cabin? We talked about the QC thing, so tell us a little bit about that.
And obviously, I only ever flew this airplane as a freighter, so it's great to come to this museum and see the airplane as a passenger airplane. It was a nice wide cabin, especially compared to the F-27. It's a bit wider. Beautiful big windows. F-27 had nice big windows too. And the main thing was that the airplane was designed from the outset as a quick change freighter passenger airplane.
Okay.
The idea was to sort of maximise revenue. They had some great ideas, designing this airplane and how they would operate it. But it had a great flat floor, really good flat floor that was all stressed for freight. Had a brilliant door at the back, a big door at the back for loading freight. And because they knew they had to replace the DC-3, and that was really the airplane they were looking to replace. And if it was just for putting the right engines on it, it'd have been a total winner.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that strikes me about this airplane is actually the height.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a tall guy, and if you think of other airplanes from this era, the DC-3 in fact being one, actually I can't stand up in a DC-3. I have to kind of hunch. Not a problem that you have. I know.
They're not.
But,
never an issue. For me.
It's never an issue. But it is actually quite roomy, and
it was a good size airplane.
We go back to. I know I've talked about the A350 today, but we talk about the extra wide body on the A350, and the fact that it actually isn't really that oval shape. It's more straight up and down at the sides.
Yeah.
This aeroplane seems to almost have a little bit of that as well, I see. I mean, there is a little bit of curve at the floor.
Yeah.
But actually it looks like, as you say, it's been optimised for freight rather than passengers.
Yeah.
And
it was a good cabin. I mean, there's some brilliant retro touches in here.
I know, hat rack.
Hat racks.
Yeah.
And there's some great
I just noticed Prince Philip's logbook is actually on this aeroplane, so a copy of his logbook. He had about 5,000 plus hours, of which he flew a number in this aeroplane. Yeah, really amazing. So if you want to come and see this aircraft, you can actually get inside it most days at this museum.
Yeah.
It's actually really good, Nick, and it actually has a proper aeroplane smell. You very often find airplanes that have been in museums for a while actually smell a bit off. This one actually smells a proper airplane. It's really nice.
It's a
really,
very
really
peculiar smell.
A
If only
peculiar
we could
smell.
transmit it to you.
Yeah. Never mind. Scratch and sniff next time. Take me round the outside.
We'll go round the outside.
Alright, so we're doing this in a rather unusual way today. So Mark's filming me, and I've got a camera which is going to film what we're looking at so that we can explain to you later what we've been looking at. So Mark, take us around the outside of the aeroplane.
Right, crew door, tiny, if I'm really honest, and could, if you didn't depressurise the aeroplane, pop open and basically knock you out. Dart engines, enormous, great 4-blade Doughty Rotal propellers, which were 12.5 feet in diameter, enormous, absolutely enormous. The engine itself, little skinny engine, was actually mounted on a round firewall that was really meant for the original turboprop, a piston engine. Sorry.
Okay, and Mark, I see out there. What are those things hanging under the wing?
Well, okay, so the aeroplane originally was designed as a 4-engine piston engine aeroplane.
Yeah.
And even though they never produced it like that, they did fly one like it. That is the history, the vestiges of where engines 1 and 4 should have been.
My goodness.
Yeah,
That's
which
ridiculous.
it is. There's a lot of rivets there and a lot of screw heads. Good. So enormous, great exhaust pipe. So if you've got the P45 lever wrong, that's where your molten engine would be dripping from.
Wow.
On this airplane doesn't have it, but on all the other airplanes they had single point refueling, and if you were refueling the airplane, you had to stand on top of the wheel.
Oh, what, to refuel it?
Plenty of co-pilots managed to catch their tie in the panel and
Almost
jump
hang
off
them-
and
hang
then
themselves.
pretty much hang themselves. Yeah, so that was always good fun. What else have we got back here? So enormous great flaps. It was a pretty good short takeoff and landing aeroplane. I think we might have some good sort of drone shot actually.
Yeah, actually we have got some amazing stuff from above. We just cut to some of those shots and let you see this aeroplane. It's an amazing aeroplane.
Here's that.
So the cargo door. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
so kind of joint cabin and cargo door, which was really quite handy. So when the aeroplane was converted to a freighter, they didn't do anything with the door, nothing at all.
Oh really?
It was plenty big enough, and many a night I've stood humping mailbags through that door, getting really sweaty before jumping next to my colleague and flying off. It must have been lovely.
It's quite big actually. I know there's only a single door there and then a secondary door that opens up, but it's actually quite big. You get some oversized cargo in there, wouldn't you?
You could get some pretty good sized cargo. We did do a lot of carrying dead bodies out to the Channel Islands for various reasons, which was always a bit spooky. But lots of mail, lots of freight, lots of newspapers, anything on sort of these softer pallets. Most of the cargo was loose loaded and was netted down when I flew it.
So you've told me, I may have read or you may have told me, there's something bizarre about the de-icing on the back of this aeroplane. We talked about de-icing some time ago,
We did. And so its competitor, the F-27, was de-iced with boots. So we spoke about boots.
Yeah.
The Herald had hot leading edge de-icing, which was brilliant. I mean, it was fantastic. However, what they did do was exit the air at the ends of the tips of the wings, and that would run over the flying surfaces. So when you turned the de-icing on, you could feel it all rumbling. It was bizarre.
That's
Truly bizarre. Yeah, it's the only airplane I've ever known like that. An enormous fin. I think Handley Page are very worried about the airplane on single engine. They designed it to cope with a bit more power.
It's pretty square, isn't it? I mean, the fin is enormous for such a short aeroplane.
It's not the most beautiful aeroplane, if I'm really honest. Not the most beautiful one. But yeah. Right, what else can we look at? Let's go around the back. There was a thing in the rudder that we had to memorise for the exam, and it was called the Irving Beak.
Irving Beak? What the
So-
hell is that?
I have no idea. It was some aerodynamic device. There are many things about an Airbus which I can no longer remember, which I really ought to remember, but for some
you
reason
remember the Irving Beak.
I can still remember the Irving Beak. What else? Just an escape door on this side.
So talk about Irving Beak has completely got me now.
Okay.
So on the fin,
Yes.
where is the Irving Beak?
It's inside between the fin and the rudder,
Okay.
and it's like a flat plate that extends from the rudder
Wow.
to the fin.
Right.
No idea why.
We'll maybe have a little look and see if we can see it.
Yeah. The only thing it did for me was once we got a load of ice in there, and the aeroplane, basically everything froze up, and we almost lost control of the aeroplane, and it's the most scared I've ever been in an aeroplane. But,
Wow.
yeah.
You can tell when you're in an airport actually, because every time we hear an airplane going over,
Yeah,
we both look
we
up,
both
to,
look
see,
up.
to see what it is.
I know,
So that's because
that's
we're near
bad.
an airport. Sorry about that in the video.
This aeroplane ended its life as a British Air Ferries aeroplane,
Sure.
but is painted here in the original BEA, what's called Red Square livery, which if you're flying out of Heathrow, you occasionally see
On the Airbus.
uniform
yeah,
Papa
on the-
Junior,
yeah, on the
which
Airbus,
is
yeah.
319, British Airways 319, looks lovely. What else do we? Let's go and have a look at the front. So for some reason, having designed a really nice wide cockpit, wide cabin.
So actually, can we pause momentarily?
Yes.
So there is a lovely plaque here, Mark, that actually makes this Herald a little bit more special than the normal one.
Yeah, isn't it nice? It's a Royal Herald,
It is.
flown by His Royal Highness the Prince,
Duke of Edinburgh.
the Duke of Edinburgh.
Duke of Edinburgh, yeah.
The Duke of Edinburgh, which is lovely to accompany the aeroplane on a trade mission to South America. Brilliant.
Interestingly, it's a movie star. So, well, kind of a movie star.
Yeah.
It appeared. This is the actual aeroplane that they used for the filming of The Crown for Netflix.
Yeah.
When they actually went on that tour and depicted that tour in the series. Yeah, amazing. Sorry, mate, I interrupted you. Let's
No.
Carry on.
Let's go around the front. Right. So, yeah, having made a nice wide cabin, for some reason they put the cockpit up in a little blister on the top, so made it extra narrow. Not sure why. I guess it could possibly get slightly better visibility. One big benefit that this aeroplane had over the F-27 was it had proper hydraulics
Okay.
rather than pneumatics, and that generally the hydraulics were pretty reliable. They did make certain bits of the hydraulics way too complicated. The nose wheel had a complicated arrangement on it, and very occasionally it would fail when it was up. And when it was up and it failed, it ripped the batteries out and gave you electrical failure all at the same time.
Oh my god.
Oh, a little lovable feature out
Yeah,
but yeah, this, is an extraordinary aeroplane, because if Handley Page had trusted their instincts, they'd have designed the world's first turboprop, specially built twin-engine regional airliner, and they'd have cleaned up like the F-27 did. But they didn't. They designed a 4-engine piston aeroplane.
Well, thanks for joining us today for Mark's trip down memory lane in this vintage monoplane. It's almost as old as me and Mark put together, but it's been real fun. I hope you've enjoyed a little walk around and talk round on this amazing aeroplane with some amazing heritage. What would you like to see next? What would you like Mark and I and Lindsay as well to go off and do next? Lindsay's actually looking after the baby and the dog today, so couldn't come with us. But where would you like us to go? We're thinking we might want to go a bit further north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowhere
so
too warm.
Nowhere too warm. We're thinking somewhere where we don't need the heavy coats. But let us know what you enjoy about it, what you don't enjoy about it, and we'll try and do something on our next layover. See you again. Bye.